TV show. It's the Golden Road TV show. Well, bridging the past with today for a better tomorrow.
Golden Road explores the intersection of arts, environment, culture, health, peace, justice, science, and technology, paving the road for positive social change.
It's the Golden Road TV show. It's the Golden Road TV show.
Hello and welcome to Golden Road TV and Radio. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino. Thanks for tuning in. And I'm working in collaboration with ARC, the Alliance for Resilient Communities here in Nevada County. And we're helping to bring issues about resilience more to the forefront and help to educate the general public. Well, we're very fortunate today to get time with an incredible gentleman, very knowledgeable, with a long history, who's working on issues of food and water security. And we want to welcome to the show today, David Howland.
Thank you, Michael.
How are you doing today?
Doing good.
Good, you look sharp.
I am sharp.
All right, you are, and we appreciate your time. And before we start, I know that you have an illustrious background. You're not a hobbyist in this area. Can you tell us a little bit about your background and how it pertains to food and water safety?
In the last 7 years, I've been working on a biological sensor that is in now patent application. It detects the level of life in water, biological life in water. And prior to that, I was in the water treatment and chemical dispensing business and spent a lot of time all over the world developing and working with water treatment and other chemical dispensing forums for improved technology in chemical dispensing and in water.
And of course, with a huge educational background, I'm sure, behind all of that.
Engineering and business both, yes.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, great. Well, thanks for being here today. And we want to start out with just kind of giving our audience the understanding of the difference between water treatment and water filtration.
Water treatment is more comprehensive than water filtration. Water treatment involves several steps to take the raw water from the environment. In the case of Nevada County, we have more surface water than maybe other places might have more well water. So the treatment facilities are really set up to manage the kind of water that you have in your environment. And this water is very challenging because we had the mining industry here before, and we have all of the other toxins that rain down on us from everywhere. So my hat's off to them. They pass their standards, and they do take a big bite out of what we have to face with our water. The challenge is that in the raw water side of it, before the treatment facilities, our farmers are burdened with agricultural water that they haven't processed yet because the water goes right by the farmers before it gets to the treatment plants.
Right.
Yeah.
And of course, there's very specific regulations. Now, I know a lot of these might be older regulations and aren't necessarily always taking in the new data about things that are affecting the quality of our water, herbicides, pesticides. Of course, we have legacy of heavy metals here in the water up in mining country.
Mm-hmm.
So based on this information, what regulations does a water provider have to follow?
The regulations they follow are set up by the California State Board of Water, and they set maximum contaminant levels for a group of toxins that they are concerned about. And then water providers process the water to meet those toxins. Now, prior to water treatment facilities in this county, the water is opened in the ditches and so forth. And the water treaters really have no way of treating that water. So that water goes to our farms before it gets treated. And that's a real challenge here in this area.
Right. And I know you brought some great visual aids. We talk a lot about the agencies who all play a role in public water, from the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to the Department of Agriculture, State Water Resources Control Board, the California Department of Pesticide Regulations. But since you're such a wealth of knowledge and information, can we talk a little bit about maybe some of the substances of concern that are in farm water and also potable water?
All right, fair enough. Let's talk about the raw water first before we get to the potable water.
Please.
We have pretty much all of the toxins you could possibly imagine, and there are many. There's too many to really talk about. I have a list of a few of the ones that might be something of concern. And in the case of, for example, aluminum, the maximum contaminant level is about 200 parts per million. For arsenic, the maximum contaminant level is about 10 parts per billion. I'm sorry, parts per billion.
So
We
looking
do
at
that.
this,
Okay,
looking at this, not to interrupt, why would there be aluminum in our water here in Nevada County?
It rains out of the sky.
Okay.
It happens to be in the environment from humans and all kinds of sources, yeah.
I also know something that people are really concerned about is fluoride. Do you know if in fact that fluoride is put in Nevada County?
It is not.
Tap water. Oh, good. That's a victory. That's
No,
good
but
news.
it's not, fluoride is a controversial chemical in two ways. One of them is it's like prescribing a medicine for everybody to use without their permission. That's one of the big problems with fluoride. You don't choose whether you have it or not. They put it in your water, you get it. The other aspect, though, is it's very controversial because it's actually a hazardous waste. And you can look more up about that. Anyway, so most of the cities in California fluoridate their water. We just happen to be lucky here in that they don't.
Fantastic. And again, we're going to have a visual aid to go along to give some more information to people.
Yeah.
But let's move on. What are the concerns of farmers here in Nevada County?
Primarily the pesticides that are introduced by the environment already, and then the fact that our local water provider is authorized to use pesticides, and they are authorized to use them into 2019 as well. They've been approved for that. And that those pesticides include Roundup, which has an ingredient glyphosate, which is on Prop 65 as a health concern. And that is primarily what this petition is, that people are signing around the county to ask.
And recently there was a huge victory for a gentleman who had cancer in Vallejo, who actually won a lawsuit for about $270 some odd million against Monsanto. So, and Proposition 65 is really the fulcrum that can give us a little more leverage against these companies and some of the responsibility of what they're doing.
Yes.
So NID is using Roundup along the irrigation ditches in Nevada County.
Yes, I feel they may choose not to, even though they're authorized to.
So in doing that, that NID water, of course, goes out to farmers in their fields.
Yeah.
Of course, I know a lot of people who will go into NID ditches or have livestock that will go into the ditches and be affected. I know recently Michael Parson had a front page article on the Union where he talked about being an organic farmer, that his farm's organic rating was being affected because of the use of the Roundup. So it's not just on the ditches, they also use it along the roads and many other
Yes, that's
areas,
right.
of course,
Correct.
and if we have a storm and it rains and it goes down into the ditch.
Yes.
So, and again, this has a detrimental impact on the water table. Can you talk about that for a minute? Because a lot of people don't realize what happens on the surface, even though we have primarily surface water, it can also leach into the water table.
It's actually larger than that, I'm afraid to say. What happens is the number of new pesticides approved every year by California Department of Pesticides is, I don't even know what the count is, it's a lot of pesticides. So we have years and years of new pesticides being approved and used on the planet. And they end up forming a toxic soup, if you will, where I'm not sure exactly how, as a scientist, I would isolate each individual toxin and ascribe it to what it does in the environment. It has a net effect on reducing the food chain, getting in the food chain, and causing not just systemic damage in individual species, but on the species that rely on them. So the idea of putting pesticides in the water is just wrong.
So we're not even talking about other things that are impacting our water quality too. So
Yeah,
again, this
right.
is a huge rabbit hole we could go down for a very long time, but we do have a little bit of time with you today. So for instance, we talked about other things in the history of toxic chemical use in the US. And I saw you brought a visual aid. Can you tell us a little something about that?
Yeah, the correlation between the radium girls, which were told that it was perfectly safe to use radium when they were painting the dials of clocks and watches. And then 21 years later, the radioactive radium took a toll on their bones, and they actually ended up glowing in the dark. Their deceased bodies were found to be glowing in the dark from how much radium they had ingested. And the fight went on for 21 years. And this is very similar to glyphosate. Right now we're having the case you talked about. Glyphosate has been around since the 70s. It's actually been used in this county.
And it's interesting, actually, some of the natural food companies right now who have touted being natural, like Nature Valley granola bars, actually just got tested and found out there's even Roundup and glyphosate in the granola bars. So let's
Cheerios has glyphosate.
Oh, not Cheerios.
I'm sorry,
Oh.
I hate to tell
What
you.
is this world coming to?
I,
Anyways, so we don't want to just bring this to light, but we want to give people some practical ideas and solutions. So is there something that people can add to their water to help diffuse or to clean or to cleanse the water so it's a little more potable?
well, in terms of additives, what you do with additives is you add something that might bind or attach what you're trying to get rid of, and then that puts it in a form that is more easy to get rid of. So for example, one of the technologies involved in the mining industry here is to throw activated carbon as little pieces in the mine sites around here, and then let the water run over it, which is full of mercury, methyl mercury. The carbon absorbs the methyl mercury, and then the carbon is easier to clean up. It doesn't end up going into the water system. So there are things you can add in a process to coagulate the material you're trying to remove. The biggest thing that you can do in the portable water side is with the proper kind of filters. And I have descriptions about that in the aids here.
Great.
Now, one more thing about that. Let me see if I can get that right. Give me a second.
Okay.
Things you can add, things you can take away.
Could you talk a little more about what water filters you recommend? So like it has to have charcoal, use ceramic filter.
Right.
So let's do that and then go into because we're gonna end up being like a 30-minute video.
Right.
Okay. So is there a particular water filtration system or technique, charcoal, ceramic, that you would at least start to recommend to people?
No, you have to analyze the toxins that you might expect and that you want to remove, and then choose the appropriate filter systems for them. Yeah.
Fantastic, good information, thank you.
Yeah.
No corporate endorsements here.
No.
Okay.
No.
What else can people do besides water filtration? What else could people do in Nevada County, but in their region, to help protect themselves against some of these
Yeah.
environmental toxins?
We can vote. That's a very powerful tool for us. And we can also teach and learn more about water and water quality and health issues. And we can become more of an expert, each of us, to try to make an effect that way. Just get involved. It's a really important issue. I can't think of a more important time, from what I know from the history of water, to take it more seriously.
Well, like the native people say, in many cultures, water is life. And we saw recently with the Dakota Access Pipeline, there's already been spills and validated concerns by the indigenous community. So I also know you have some exciting patents and projects and things coming up that are going to help us in this area. And I just want to deeply thank you for your commitment, your time, and your expertise to help bring this to light for our community. And anything you want to finish with before we end?
Happy to be here. I'm glad we're all getting involved. I'm really excited about what people are doing now. It feels good. Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for tuning in to Golden Road TV and Radio. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, and I also want to thank ARC, the Alliance for Resilient Communities, and helping to contact David to make this interview possible. You're going to hear a lot more from them in the future, and make sure you check out the whole directory listing of all the people like David and businesses that are concerned about our community at thesourcedirectory.org. Thank you.
Welcome to Nevada City Co-Housing. This is my neighborhood where I live. We are 34 townhomes with a big common house as our common facility. And we've been here over 12 years now. Co-housing is a community where we have our own private homes plus extensive common facilities. So when you live here, you really do know everybody. welcome to my place. Why don't you come on in? Yeah, one of the things we love about living here is big porches. So it's like you have a whole extra room outside, and we get to do a lot of our day-to-day living out here. Welcome to my house. This is one of the larger homes in our community. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath, and it's designed by the same architect that's doing Fair Oaks Eco Housing. I love here is the efficient use of storage. So this is the storage underneath the staircase, and you can see when it's well organized, I can fit all sorts of stuff in there. And some of our closets upstairs are extra deep also, so there's shelves behind the clothes there. So this architect is, Chuck Durrett, is really good at working in storage possibilities wherever he can. So we own our homes as private condominiums, just like you would buy any townhouse. And we're members of the Homeowners Association, which is what manages all the common areas. I think what's different about co-housing is a much higher level of involvement, where people are actually involved in the management, and we're actually much more hands-on in terms of both doing the landscaping and maintenance and knowing our budgets. Nobody's doing it to us, we do it ourselves. Welcome to my back porch. I eat a lot of meals out here in the summertime, and it's great. One of the things with these co-housing designs is that we have a community side where I can sit on the front porch and might talk to neighbors. People might join me for a glass of wine. Or if I've got a good friend over and I want a little more privacy for a more private conversation, I'd sit on the back porch. So again, we're always looking for opportunities to have both privacy and community, depending on your mood, depending on what you feel like that time. I'd like to introduce you to my friends, Marty and John, here from the Fair Oaks Eco Housing community. And you're trying to create a community.
I'm in love with this community. I love the way it feels. And I saw this community from the beginning a number of years ago, met Katie McCammon, was so impressed with her, and also with Chuck Durrett, the architect. And so I said, hey, we need more of these communities, and I live in Fair Oaks, and so now we have Fair Oaks Eco Housing under construction, and it will look very similar to Nevada City Co-Housing. I also want to introduce my good friend John Zostek, who is one of our newer members, and he'll talk a little bit about what attracted him to this concept.
What I anticipate and expect really is that in my relations with our fellow members, that my creativity will increase and the creativity of the group will increase, and that the intellectual pursuits of this group will be enhanced. This is a very curious group, and I think they are really all lifetime learners, and so it's exhilarating intellectually to be part of this group. And there's also the quality of teamwork, because we do some of our own work to maintain our facilities, our common facilities. And when you have real teamwork, you feel good. And you feel like you are part of something very important. And there's a quality of satisfaction and accomplishment that comes along with that kind of work. So I really do look forward to that sense of fulfillment in several aspects of living.
And for me, one of the attractive points of co-housing was having helped my mom in her final years move from an independent living facility to assisted living to a nursing home, all because she needed to for her care, and she'd been living on her own in a big house. And having gone through that with her, I recognized how it was not ideal. And that I wanted to look for other opportunities for me and my partner to have a different end of life scenario as much as possible. Whether or not we will end up needing those facilities in the long run, it feels like being in co-housing will help us put that off.
Another great feature about co-housing is the ability to do shared gardening. I'm here in front of the Nevada City Co-Housing, which as you can see is not only productive, it's beautiful, and it fuels a lot of the common meals, so they get a lot of fresh produce, and we're planning to do the same thing in Fair Oaks. It's a beautiful June day in Nevada City. We just took a tour of Nevada City Co-Housing, summer 2018. In less than a year, we'll be moving into our own home by this time next year. 30 families will have moved into our homes, and I can't wait. I am really excited about Fair Oaks Eco Housing because we're a combination of smart growth, green design, and quality of life. Smart growth because we're an infill location and we're not doing sprawling all over the planet. We're right next to Fair Oaks Village. We're right next to the American River Parkway. And we're taking land that once just had 2 homes, and now we'll be putting our 30 homes in a wonderful, compact, friendly design. Green design because we have so many energy efficient features. We're solar ready, and our utility bills will be way less. Plus, the other exciting thing about community is that is the secret of sustainability, because we all help each other become more sustainable. We learn from each other, and in community, it's a safe and supportive environment, and I can't wait to move in. Hi, I'd like to give you just a little bit of an idea of what we started with, what the project looks like. So if you look here, you can see the land that we bought. It's 3.7 acres, had just 2 homes on it, and we tore those homes down. We're now under construction, and what it will look like when we all start moving in next year in 2019 is this compact community with all the homes that face each other with front porches and all the parking off to the side, and with a shared clubhouse and swimming pool and spa and workshop and garden and orchard and a wonderful quality of life. Here's a picture of what our buildings will look like, the architectural design, and you can see we have adjacent townhomes, and so it's very energy efficient. And if you'd like to learn more, we have tours twice a month, and all the information is on our website, fairoaksecohousing.org, and we invite you to just come and check it out. Thank you.
Don't water. Maybe.
So what I love about co-housing is all the opportunities just to stop. I work at home and I just needed a break, so this is my equivalent of the water cooler conversation. I found a neighbor to come chat with and catch up with.
It's a golden road, TV show. Yes, it's a golden road, TV show. It's a Golden Road TV show.com.
So, again, thank you, Sandra and Kemptonville School. It's really been a pleasure to be back. I was here a couple years ago where I did a very short series on what we call rhythm-based music. Of course, in music, there's a lot of different styles and approaches to music, but to really work with the kids to instill life lessons, things about working together, collaboration, leadership, development skills, the ability to be able to participate and collaborate. Most importantly is listening and giving others the respect that we would want, so that when it's our turn to talk, we raise our hand and we start to speak, that others are listening to what we have to say. That communication is a really important life skill. So we put together just a very short piece of music as a sampler today. It's really been an honor and pleasure to work with them. And yeah, we're going to show you what we've come up with so far. So I hope you enjoy. And this is the Camptonville World Beat Percussion Ensemble for the higher grade. So nice round of applause. Part of our music class, we've been talking about all the different cultures and the styles of music. So we're trying to look outside of just maybe the music that people are familiar with and understand that rhythm is a universal language. No matter where you go in the world, you have rhythm. And rhythm is a universal language, so it gives us the ability to be able to communicate with each other, even if we don't speak the language. Okay, so this is a welcome song that comes to us today from Nigeria, West Africa. And if you know the words, feel free to sing along. Bonga ilafia ashe ashe. Bonga ilafia ashe ashe. Bonga ilafia ashe ashe. Yeah, I was amazingly impressed with the talents of some of the kids in the class. All of them, really. Some of them have a better aptitude for keeping tempo, some have great voices. Fortunately, Camptonville School realizes the importance of the arts and music as a program. A lot of schools I work in aren't as fortunate. So I'm saying this because I want to encourage you as a parent to try to help cultivate that interest and ability that some of them have awakened or generated here in our very short time together. So music's a great skill, not just for brain development, but again for social skills and all around quality of life. So we're going to do another song, but on this one we're going to have them help us out, huh? Here we go. Everyone. Feel the beat. Feel the beat. You got it. So, again, it's really been a privilege to be here working with the kids, and the development and the progress they've made in just a couple months has really been amazing. I wish I could take all the credit, but I really want to give also a round of applause and credit to not only Sandra Ross, but the staff and the teachers here at Campbellville School. I think they deserve a nice round of applause. Hello and welcome to the Source Directory, a completely new and innovative approach to create a list of individuals, organizations, projects, and events that are helping to make our area more resilient and a healthier, happier place to live. Within the directory, you'll find hundreds of different businesses and people who are all committed and dedicated to community building, environmental restoration, self-sustainability, and economic development. Some of the categories you'll find them under is arts and culture, health and healing, peace and justice, food and farm, science and technology. I'm one of the founders, Michael DiMartino, and I'm also the host and producer of Golden Road TV and Radio, which produces a weekly 2-hour TV and radio show, once again, to bring focus to those people in our region that are helping to make a change for the better and to make this area much happier and healthier with a higher quality of living for all of us. Thank you for your time. If you'd like more information, just check out the sourcedirectory.org and goldenroadtelevision.com. Thank you for your time. And good afternoon. You are watching Golden Road Television. I'm your host, Michael DiMartino, and I'm really happy and honored to get a little bit of time with a gentleman who's been very busy lately. But nonetheless, his roots and his work goes back for decades. I'm sure you've heard of the Green Festival, but I'm talking not live right now on the air through Skype with Lou Casabianca from the Resilient City Academy. So welcome.
Thank you, Michael. It's a pleasure to see you.
Well, I have to say you've the few times that we've spent together has been extremely enlightening. And it's actually, along with the show, given us a little more traction to bring content to our community that's very pertinent, especially at a time right now with the fires and the various things happening around the world. So just to give us, the viewers, a little bit of a profile, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and some of your history with Green Festival and the Resilient City Academy?
Sure. I mean, basically, I come from a broadcast journalism background, and my interest in professional work has been in the area of writing books, being a speaker at events, founding magazines, and doing a long-term consulting with companies like Disney and Sony on setting up their digital strategy and looking at future technologies. And about 6 years ago, I really decided to focus on the nonprofit space and take that knowledge from the commercial world and bring it into and supporting groups like Green Festival and Sierra Club and others in being able to use these technologies to communicate better with their membership and to use them for PR and to develop courses and content. And in the process, I started doing first responder. I first became a first responder myself and got certified. And then I've been teaching and training and working with people and bringing them the skills by city or by individual or by age group to handle, the ongoing effects of climate change. And unfortunately, what we're seeing in Napa and Sonoma and Santa Rosa, et cetera, is the result of very specifically of climate change and flooding in Florida and hurricanes. And I mean, it's all happening simultaneously. I've been working with Dr. Kevin Donner, who's the co-founder of Global Exchange, which is a 24-year-old entity that's been doing a lot of work in the field of social responsibility tourism, where 10, 12, 15, 20 doctors or scientists or teachers will go to a place like Pakistan or Venezuela or Bangladesh and bring their skills to the people in that city or country. And it was Global Exchange that spun out the entity that became Green Festival. And Green Festival is at this point about to retire. The last series of shows have been done after a 14-year stint. And we're creating something called the Resilient Cities Expo that includes Resilient City Solutions, community background in first resilience training, and the reality of what's called the Chief Resilient Officer, the CRO, the person who's more or less like the flight deck commander working with the mayor of the city, looking at everything from water, fire, and safety to education, poverty, and food supplies, and making sure that someone is working on the preparedness piece so that when the inevitable happens, whether it's flood, hurricane, or fires, that the city and the population are prepared, the schools, the hospitals, et cetera.
And I have to say that the timing too is so pertinent. Golden Road TV and radio show, we just celebrated our 1-year anniversary in August, and we've been doing a lot of community building, bridge building with people between local government, media, radio stations like KVMR, KZFR, KUBU in Sacramento, and also broadcasting on the local cable stations, but also working a lot with the local indigenous communities, from the Winnemem people up in Mount Shasta to here locally, the Maidu and the Nisenan. But what really struck me is, we've been kind of building these bridges going where, could I say, is where the energy is. And recently I had an opportunity to meet you, which really illuminated me as far as, we're building these resources, we're building these bridges, but where is it all going besides just the pure nature of creating conscious and educational content? What do we do with this? So upon our meeting and seeing what you've been doing, not only with Green Festival, but with this Resilient City Academy and this whole movement, it's incredible how now we're in collaboration, we're starting to weave these things together, because again, we can see whether it was Puerto Rico with the hurricane or Houston, or like you said, the fires here, that this is an issue that it really can't wait anymore. It's not like just looking at future preparedness, it's really dealing in the moment. So that's what really struck me about you, not just the technological aspect of you're very on par with the current technology, but also the vision of how you're using this technology to educate people. And it's really kind of given me just a whole resurgence in the last year of effort, and how we could kind of help direct the media from the show to help support a very noble and very pertinent cause.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. And likewise, with you. I've had the opportunity over the last 4 years to visit virtually every first responder office in the Bay Area from San Francisco down to Santa Cruz, Gilroy, Redwood City, San Mateo, Los Gatos, Cupertino, up through the East Bay. And the timing of going to the North Bay, which, starting with Vallejo, Fairfield, et cetera, is exactly the moment in time when we connected. So again, it's some serious synchronicity happening.
Definitely.
But the point and the goal is to get all of the first responder offices in those cities fully networked, and that was part of what I was doing. So there is a network called Cadre, which is looking at being able to share information among the first responder offices. Now, some of them, like Cupertino, is a building. They've got trucks and they've got a staff and a serious budget. Others, and I won't name them, but are basically a desk and a chair with a answering machine. And there's no full-time staff, and usually a firefighter is part-time handling that position. But with the projections for the Bay, one of the biggest problems is this combination now of sea level rise, with the Bay going up 1 foot, 2 foot, 3, 5 feet over the next 5, 10, 20 years. And, we've done the maps and have the video of Fisherman's Wharf being underwater, and, lots of, where the ferry building is, that's going to be underwater. I mean, it's very serious. And unfortunately, people don't realize it, but Sacramento is the most endangered city in the state because of the combination of the Bay coming in on one side and the levees breaking on the other.
Which, of course, we just had Oroville Dam, potential dam failure recently, and they're talking about the new Bear Creek Dam. So, and I think what's interesting, too, and this is part of, I know, my inspiration to do the show and all the work and time and effort that goes in, is that we're seeing that as well as the system works in some areas, that it's greatly deficient. And when I think part of what you're doing too is we really need everybody on board. It's not like we can count on local government, city, state, federal government anymore to cure all of these problems. And even still the potential of millions of people in Puerto Rico right now, which is obviously part of the United States, still not having water, electricity, the catastrophe, even the remnants of what happened with New Orleans and what's happening right now in Houston, and with the wildfires, it really is going to take people to become educated and step up as individuals, as part of their community to help.
That's the premise.
Yeah.
That's the premise. That's why we're inventing this category of first survivor and first resilience, that you can't count on the city, the county, the state, or the country to bail you out. You have to have a plan locally, starting out with yourself as an individual. If it's just you and your partner in life, male, female, couple, whatever, then that. And if it's a family, then the kids need to be, brought into it and understand how to shut the gas off, for example. One of the biggest causes of injury in an earthquake is the house being knocked off the foundation, the pipes being broken, and no one is aware of the skill set to shut the gas off before there's so much gas that the place blows up. Someone goes down with a lighter to find what they're doing, and they accidentally blow the house up. So the solution is like a 50-cent wrench on a bungee cord next to the valve, and you turn it 2 revolutions, righty, tighty, loosey goosey, and you shut it off. And so literally a 6 or 7-year-old kid who's been trained to do that can do that. So that's a simple example of first survivor skills, rather than waiting for somebody from PG&E or a first responder to be there to shut it off when it's too late.
Right.
And the other piece of this that we're bringing a lot of innovation to is there's 2 words here. First of all, the idea of emergency and catastrophic disaster, all those words are unnecessarily doomsday and negative. So we don't use those terms in the baseline. In other words, those things might happen, such as the fires right now in the North Bay. But the real value is being resilient, as well as being able to tap into resilience. And the way I'll differentiate those is the resilient is the personal part of it. So we're training people to understand that their state of being, their consciousness during a catastrophic event is going to depend a lot on what preparation they've done before the event.
Right.
So if you're prepared and you have a plan and you know where there's going to be food, water, vitamins, batteries, etc., and you know where to meet your children or your partner, case may be, and you've actually rehearsed it, and you have what's called in this world the go bag, with the basic food, water, vitamins, etc., flashlight, etc.
I mean, it's the things they talk about every evening on Coast to Coast. I know that George Norrie's been talking a lot about the possible magnetic pulse, solar flare. If the electric grid goes down, what will people do?
Right, right. That's another piece of it,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the worst case scenario. But going back to the baseline of, and just stay with me for a second on this differentiation because it's important. What those people, George Norrie and most EMTs are talking about is this whole, it's a catastrophic event, it's an emergency. Oh my God, we've got to be prepared. That's true, and that's one mindset. But it's really important, and there's a whole movement in psychology today that's called human beings being resilient, being able to get hit with something they don't expect emotionally and come back,
right,
rather than being taken out by it. So kids running around screaming because the building is shaking, and after the shaking, crying and sitting in a corner doesn't help anybody.
Right.
If they've been prepared and they know what it's like, they go through it as an observer, and their state of being is very different at the end of the process. That's the resilient part of it.
Which deals with not just the material aspect, but also the emotional, the traumatic,
it's the human, psychological, emotional intelligence.
The whole human condition, right?
It's not being put into the formula right now.
Right.
And having done this for enough years and putting enough people through training, where we've got a 30-foot, building on fire, and they've got to put it out, with a hose and fire extinguisher. People's real energy shows up, and after putting enough people, as young as 12 and as old as 91 years old, I've learned that the amount of preparation they have beforehand, reading, video, PowerPoint, simulation, makes a huge difference when they're actually confronted with it. And it's kind of like there's something called mirror neurons, where they remember this in their subconscious. And now they can watch themselves and be much more engaged rather than being driven by fear and the unknown. So that's an important piece to distinguish from the resilient part, which is understanding, for example, if there's a frying pan in the kitchen and there's an oil fire, the old wives' tale is, throw some breadcrumbs or some flour on it, and that's not it at all. That becomes an explosive, and the whole thing can blow up in your face. So the answer is putting a cover on it and smothering it so it doesn't get oxygen again, which anybody can do if they know the difference.
Well, so I will say this, not to interrupt, but speaking of fires, I'm broadcasting live here from KVMR studios, and of course there's a lot happening here with the fires. So supposedly, technology being what it is, they're having some difficulties in the production studio. So they're going to need to come in here in just a few minutes and use some of the computers and the full bandwidth. But we're really just scratching the surface, and tonight was kind of our first Skype rendezvous and kind of testing and starting to communicate. But obviously you're a wealth of knowledge. You've been doing this for decades, and now it's something that's extremely pertinent. It's not like something we can put to a back burner anymore. So as busy as you are, I really appreciate this time that we got to talk. I also want to thank my technical director who's here, Jim Heck, who makes sure everything is working for me. And I appreciate your time, and we'll definitely be doing more talking. Lots of exciting things coming up in November with some public events. I know that we're going to be Skyping you in for those. Also talking about some land-based potential projects that people can get involved in, and how they can bring their knowledge or their resource to the table to help build this resource directory, which again I know you've been working on for a long time, creating some very advanced prototypes and software. So on that, we'll wrap up our discussion tonight. But would you like to leave us with a little short tidbit before we go?
Well, I just want to add on the piece of thinking of this both holistically and holographically. In a holistic sense, in terms of integrating the community, both in terms of moms, dads, kids, teachers, school district, and the city administration. I mean, that is the, if you will, the ecosystem that needs to be involved for this to be successful in any community. And I look forward to meeting Dr. Kevin Donaher, who's been my collaborator in a lot of this work we've done, projects in Oakland, city of San Francisco, Gilroy, you know, most of the South Bay, Santa Cruz, and working in several cities in Australia now in terms of looking at the whole Pacific Rim as a starting point.
Right.
And the Art Deco theaters in the cities that we're talking about, we see as an untapped resource to bring these communities together with the library. So the library's got the research, usually a better internet, and access to meeting spaces for the kids or for the business community or for homeschoolers. You know, there's a lot of communities that need this information. The seniors as well. You know, it's a very important constituency where, you know, they've got a lot of experience, and rather than being thought of as being incidental, they can actually be a primary supporter of solving these issues when they come up in a community.
It takes a village, right?
Exactly.
So if people are interested in, and I know we're just beginning to roll out our collaboration, you've been doing this for a long time. If people would like to get more information or be in touch, how could they do that and communicate with you?
Well, go to the website would probably be the best approach. It's, you know, Resilient Solutions, ResilientCitySolutions.com. And we'll have downloadable PDFs and videos and other material for them to check into there.
Brilliant. All right, well, we'll be talking again soon, and I want to again thank Jim Heck, my technical director, and thank KVMR for the bandwidth to be able to do this Skype interview with you. And again, much appreciation and respect for all the things that you're doing, and just looking forward to getting a little deeper into our collaboration, and looking forward to some of these events in November. So again, thank you so much for your time.
And I would like to suggest doing the next one this way with Kevin online, because he would be the host for the Quincy segment in terms of representing what we're doing there, or the guest speaker as the case. And I think also potentially the both of us, if it's technically feasible, participating in each one of the cities and using the three. It's Nevada City, Shasta, and Chico.
Yep.
So we can start there and think of Quincy as a starting point.
Brilliant, brilliant. Well, again, I'm glad that Mr. John Miner of Art Rock Ensemble brought us together, and we'll be talking very soon. Let's send out prayers to all the people suffering from these fires. But like you said, it is catastrophic in a way, but it's catastrophic because we've ignored the reality for so long that now it's kind of burning up, blowing up in our face, and flooding.
It's the wild card with nature, where we had, so much rain last year that it repopulated what is basically kindling, and as opposed to the indigenous people who have the wisdom to do controlled burn, that was never done. And people didn't clear enough space around their homes. This is the idea of preparedness.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, a lot of people, when they were called and told, get out of there, didn't believe it, and they stayed. And the wind wasn't working with them this time. It's really unfortunate. I mean, it's over 4,000 homes now, and it's going on 40 people, and 400 people missing. So this is very serious. I mean, this is the worst fires in the history of California.
Right. And that's why, again, independent media is so important, because trying to reach people and being the voice of the community. So again, Mr. Lou Casabianca, thank you so much for your time. And we'll be
DiMartino, I appreciate this.
And I love the dolphin picture. So I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I really believe they've got a corner on intelligence and spirituality that human beings need to learn from, So both,
they see the whole hologram. Yeah, they do.
The cetacean. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much.
All right, Steve. Pleasure seeing. Can you send me a copy of this? I'd like to see what we did, so I have a starting point in reference.
I'll send it right over.
All right, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Is this it for now? Are you done for the day, or what do you? How do
I'm
you
gonna
handle-
call. I'm gonna call you once I get packed up and Jim's on his way.
Okay, great.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
I'll see you then. Peace.
Peace.
It's a Golden Road TV show. It's a Golden Road TV show. Well, listen once, listen twice. Oh, won't you please take my advice? It's the Golden Road TV Show.com.
I can't imagine us as a community letting this building go and not be available for our children and grandchildren and their children.
We went to kindergarten in this building 100 years ago.
No, 1949.
Okay.
Our school, love you all. Just save our building.
A 1905 historic building. It's one of the oldest school buildings in the state of California, even in the western United States. So for us to let it deteriorate or not use it, that wouldn't be such a smart thing.
The architecture is special. There's really only a few buildings in our community that have this kind of iconic attraction.
There's just so much history and so many memories in that building by people that attended school there and also have worked there over the years.
My mother, who is 97 years old now, went from first grade through 8th grade in this school.
We both remember how wonderful the high school was when it was a big, beautiful monument up on that hill right down from the queue, and it was gorgeous, and it's gone. And once things are gone, they're gone forever.
Out of all the hearts today that were made, this one's my favorite. I didn't write it. I don't know who did, there's no name on it, but it says the future belongs to those who see possibilities before they become obvious, I believe. And I just really think that captures the essence of what we're doing today, is trying to imagine those possibilities and really believing that it may happen.
And here we are on Tuesday, May 15th. We're broadcasting live from the Nevada County Tech and Innovation Center in beautiful Nevada City. And we have the pleasure and honor to be speaking with Austin Bennett, who's running for Senate in District 6. So welcome.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'm very happy to be here, Mike, and thanks for having me. And so, yeah, I'm running for the state Senate in District 6, which is really the heart of Sacramento and some of the surrounding areas. There's the population that's about 1 million. We've got about 500,000 registered voters. And I decided to run because of the direction that this state is going in and my concern for my children's future. And so my situation, as I've mentioned often, has been fine. My wife and I live in the first house we bought. It was just my wife and me, and 5 children later. And I've got an office, been in the same area for about 17 years and enjoying my drive back and keep my date nights with my wife, family time with children. And so there's really nothing in terms of wealth that I felt that I could achieve more. My wealth is in my family, but I've watched the continual erosion of this state and representatives who claim to represent us, but they're not speaking on issues that are so critically important to bring out to the open. And often these are considered to be politically incorrect to discuss, or there's elephants in the room you just don't mention. And so I decided I would throw my hat into the ring, and I would be a voice for the people. I would run on a platform of transparency and speak on things that mattered most for the people. And on the issues, I hadn't decided exactly what issues I would focus on for my platform, and it kind of evolved because as I started to run, things were becoming more apparent to me, and even meeting certain activist groups, and I started to learn more, and we had a situation that truly, it's a crisis. And really to sum it up, I just don't think that there's anything more important when we're discussing issues than our health, because without our health, then nothing else matters.
So as you're creating your platform and your campaign, I know that you probably have come up against opposition to some of your ideas and insights, but what are some of the main points of your platform and campaign dealing with health and in Sacramento County? Right. Well, one of the first groups I met was the group that was exposing really the dangers of vaccines. And I went to the Capitol. I met with a senator at the Capitol and to discuss my candidacy and support from the party, or the endorsement. And I met a group, and that's where it all began for me. And I realized, I mean, these people were getting information out that was so critically important. And one of the questions that came out, because my wife and I chose to homeschool our children. My wife, who's a physical therapist, we just decided during that time she had the opportunity to stay home and homeschool, and we had made a decision not to vaccinate our children. And so that kind of opened up opportunity for dialogue with this group. And one of the things that they brought up, as they were inquiring of me, because they knew I was a candidate for the state Senate, was about vaccinating my children if I had. And then I remember another question being thrown out, well, do you think all vaccines are bad? Well, I hadn't researched it so in-depthly. All I knew is per studies, we chose not to vaccinate our children. And someone asked me, well, what do you think? Do you think that any vaccination or any inoculation is a good thing to do? And I said, well, maybe tetanus, as an example. And, that turned out to be the wrong answer also. And so when I started to research the industry, I was floored. I mean, the idea that, I'm 53 now, that I had about 12 vaccinations growing up, so about 12 vaccines. Now they want children to have 50 and more than 70. And they're even increasing that now. And so the more I focused in on what was going on with pharma in vaccines, that was such a total awakening for me, because I realized
that our children were being harmed. And I eventually had the opportunity to speak at Houston. It was the Global Vaccine Summit protest, and met mothers there, it was an amazing experience, whose children were injured from vaccines. And then when I realized it was more prevalent than I ever had noticed before, and just as an example, I was speaking to my neighbor, my next door neighbor. I'm not talking about across the street, right next door, and speaking to the mother about the platform and some of the things that I was learning. And she told me that when her 3-year-old daughter was vaccinated, that she had lost her personality and developed autism. And so the more I researched, as I said, the more I realized that the people are being assaulted.
So, of course, vaccinations, and there's a lot of documentaries out, including Vax, that bring some of the information and scientific research to the surface. But in other areas of health, for adults and for agriculture, what are some of the other things you found as you've been mounting your campaign?
Right, and I'll touch on that, but just since you mentioned Vax, I have to share that when the Vax team, I actually got interviewed by the Vax team, and that really opened up a lot of opportunity for me, got me a lot of exposure, and I appreciated what they're doing. And so, some of the things that I've been open about anyway, even using social media, the only thing I've really used social media for the last 8 years when my wife signed me up was to disseminate truth, because I saw the things that were going on with the federal government, really the overreach, and just a lot of things that were taking place. And even with chemtrails, recognizing the idea that our skies were being sprayed with substances that were dangerous and detrimental to our health. And it was like one thing led to another, and I started to research more and think about more. I want to go back on the vaccines when they really started to discuss the idea about mercury. I remember studying, seeing a documentary years ago about the idea that mercury being in our body at all is so harmful. And so having mercury put in our teeth, that even before I ran, I had all the mercury removed from my teeth. And so to elaborate, so that opened up the door with Monsanto, which I've been critical about before. My wife's famous salsa that she makes, the key ingredient is just tomatoes that are organic and normal and that are full of flavor. And so those became my platform, because I realized that, for example, that Monsanto, which has been stealing our seeds, I knew about before I started running more than 2 years ago, that Monsanto is bullying our organic farmers, and not only bullying our organic farmers, but actually fraudulently taking them to court and winning in court and getting farmers out of business and coercing many farmers to actually basically get in bed with Monsanto and start selling their seeds so they can continue to have a livelihood. And so even studying the area of genetically modified organisms, I came to learn that not only are they not healthy, but they are actually detrimental to our health. These seeds are toxic to our systems. And so I couldn't help but start talking about Monsanto. I mean, they're controlling about 80%, from what I understand, and it looks very compelling, 80% of our grocery industry. And so I started to discuss Monsanto and started to expose the dangers of GMOs, and really to be a voice for farmers and talk about, as a state senator, that I would create incentives for organic farmers to grow responsibly, to take care of the soil, and to even use tax incentives, because really organic farmers are the health of this nation. And so that of course led me to the idea, as I'm researching more. We grew up with the idea that fluoride was good to be in our drinking water because it was good for our teeth. Well, that's an absolute lie. And the more things that opened up, the more aware I became of how we as a people have been lied to. And I worked previously, a little more than 20 years ago, I worked as a reporter for an NBC affiliate. And even then, you know, I remember that we were very much obligated to our sponsors. And so at times, you know, we were expected to take sound bites out of context and slant stories, and that's just a reality. And this was more than 20 years ago, and it's why I left the industry. And so Mike, so the answer here is the things that are impacting our health, because right now with what I see that's being sprayed in the sky, you know, I was looking at a Preservation Act that was written in 2001 that referred to chemtrails. And yet now what I've discovered with opposition is they're trying to convince the people to quit using that term, and now steering the people to the term geoengineering, which connotes that there's some good purpose for spraying our skies with these dangerous toxic metals, aluminum, barium. Now they're discovering that there's even lithium in it, and believe it or not, my 10-year-old son, I don't even ever remember using this term with him, but yesterday he was talking about it, and he said, Dad, you know, they're putting lithium, I've said to placate society, but my 10-year-old son said it's to make society docile. You know, I was so impressed by him. The idea is that we're truly under assault. That comment is not inflammatory. That statement is not inflammatory, but it is the truth. And so, as someone who's seeking to represent the people, there's nothing that's more important that we stop this assault against our health. You know, some people have told me, well, you know, Austin, quit bringing those things up right now, because if you bring those things up right now, people are going to think that you're crazy, so wait until you get into the government. Well, let me tell you what would happen if that was the strategy that I took. That when a representative gets into office without the support of the people, that the people don't recognize that we are under assault and that their representative is speaking the truth, then that representative is going to be ineffective. Because I've spoken about chemtrails to a number of people. I specifically spoke about chemtrails to one of the senators, and when I brought up the idea that I would speak about controversial topics, and the senator asked me, we were meeting outside, and he said, so what are you going to talk about? What controversial topic are you going to talk about? And I said, for example, chemtrail. And the senator said, I don't know what that is, so it's not important. And so that's the situation that we have right now, is that we have representatives right now who are feigning that they don't know what certain things are, because they are being coerced, they are being conditioned, or they're being bought to keep their mouths closed. So again, if the people are not rising up behind the representative, then the representative. So I felt that I needed to reach that critical mass, that there's an awakening with the people, because when the people wake up, I will come into the government with a big stick, and that big stick is going to be the people who are standing behind me. And I've said it before, and I'm unabashed about saying it, that when there is a vote in the Senate, when there is a vote in the Senate, that it would be very effective if there was gallows that were lined up outside, because if our representatives recognize that the people are not going to tolerate treason, then they will stop turning their backs on the people and turn their backs on special interests if they feel that kind of pressure. Otherwise, we're going to continue to go down the road that we're going in today.
Great. So you spoke a little bit about chemtrails and also how the difference between chemtrail verbiage and geoengineering. We spoke a little bit about fluoride, and we also spoke about vaccinations. And could you talk a little bit, because I know one of the big things that affect us up here in this area is the use of petroleum-based or industrial agriculture. And it's very easy, without looking too far, if you go south of Sacramento, the whole Central Valley is basically a drought-stricken, toxic wasteland of industrial agriculture. Fortunately, Sacramento and north of the Delta still has some level of pristineness to the environment. But can you talk about your feelings about the use of some of these more nefarious types of weed killers and pesticides that are being used on our agriculture?
Right. Once again, this wonderful corporation that's plagued the world, Monsanto. I'm absolutely against using anything that is harmful to our health. It doesn't make sense. You know, taking shortcuts for the idea for profit is unacceptable. You know, we have to protect our earth, we have to protect our health, we have to protect our systems. And so I oppose anything in terms of those things that are being used. I can tell you that when we shop, that we specifically are shopping organic, and also, but even knowing that we're shopping organic, that we're concerned about some of the things that are coming down on it. So I know that's kind of a long answer, Mike, but I can tell you that for my family, that we do everything possible to avoid getting poisons into our body. Let me, if I can just really, is that right? And you know, when you would taste, you know, the stuff that he was growing, it was amazing. You know, the watermelons that they had there, I mean, they had all kinds of agriculture that was there. And the thing that he shared is it was very difficult to sell, because you know, people don't want to spend more for organic products. Growing organic is more difficult because now you've got bugs and things like that that can get into your vegetables. So I witnessed it through him that it was much more challenging, and so it has to be through information and education, that once people recognize that it's more expensive to eat unhealthy, that they'll be more willing to spend a little bit more to support organic farmers. But I also feel that our government should be creating incentives for organic farmers to potentially even to subsidize, to help them grow organic foods for the citizens, for we the people. Otherwise, you know, we're going to continue to see that. If people are willing to spend less and not complain about getting pesticides in their food, then we're not going to see change. So people need to recognize how toxic and how harmful this stuff is. That's why you see this increase with cancer, and we have an unhealthy population now. And so to answer that question a long way, pesticides, you know, that are harmful to our health have no business being in agriculture.
And one of the interesting things, I'm currently taking a practical permaculture class. And contrary actually to popular belief, we're actually finding that organic agriculture can be far less expensive because you're not using a lot of the chemical-based nutrients. We're not supporting the petroleum industry, and that it just takes simple understanding of the technologies of things like compost, things like mulching. And what they found out in the last couple of years is that actually organic farming, when done correctly, is a great way to also do carbon farming from the environment. So I wanted to add that because, again, you can look up permaculture online. There's a great organization I work with called Practical Permaculture in Rough and Ready, California, with Cathay Fish. But she's been traveling the world for almost 40 years teaching about permaculture. And there's a lot of very simple solutions. But like you said, people need to be educated.
Right.
And like your platform has pointed out, and this is why I'm so passionate about helping to support you, because the cornerstone of your platform is really about the basic right of health.
Yes.
And the quality of life.
Right. And permaculture, I've never even heard of it, but that sounds awesome.
It's amazing. They're actually doing things they're doing desert reforestation, and they're also realizing now that through nutrient-rich soil and different types of topsoilings and different types of creating infrastructure, that we can do carbon farming to actually pull carbon out of the environment. And not only that, but the whole politicizing of water and the drought consciousness in California is really based on a farce of water use mismanagement, and how the dams have actually had an extremely detrimental effect
on the Central Valley, which used to be a wetlands, which used to have lots of wildlife, which used to be very fertile, and with the introduction of industrial and petroleum-based agriculture and chemical agriculture, you can see when you drive down Route 5, I mean, they can barely sustain cattle out there at this point. So, you know, there's really living examples of how people can see this truth. And I'm not trying to politicize this. We're just trying to give people the information. And that's one of the things I love about your campaign. Although these things can be politicized, because everything these days is politicized, from religion to food to whatever it might be. But the fact that you're running on a platform that really puts quality of life and health first and children first is extremely innovative and forward thinking for the traditional political model. So in my eyes, you're one of the people at the forefront of what's happening on the grassroots level with millions of people across the country and around the world, and you're representing those people. So I want to thank and congratulate you for your research, your education, your innovation, and the time and effort that you're committing to wear this hat, to get engaged in the political system, to make some real change. Because I think real change is going to have to be the grassroots movement meeting the political representatives and actually finding sane alternatives, because what we're doing right now is not working.
Right, absolutely. And I'm so impressed by you. And see, this is the thing, is representing the people and being a representative of the people. You know, we're not going to be an expert in every area, but you bring the right people together. And I can say that I would want you to lead a task force that would relate to exactly what you're talking about here, relating to our agriculture. You know, there's different areas that people have focused on and spent so much time on in looking out for the interest of other people. And, you know, what I do is in my mind, I have to let you know that I identify people who are experts in those areas that benefits the people, and so trusting that I get in, you know, there's going to be people who I want to be part, because we do have to get a task force in different areas to get that, to disseminate the information, or to support what you're doing here to get that information out, because the more that people are aware of it, then that's what's going to empower us, and also not to tolerate the injustices and the things that has been happening, because we have right now a media that is misrepresenting truth or downplaying the harm that a lot of this stuff that we've just discussed is actually doing. They minimize it, and some of the arguments absolutely does not make sense. And so
again, you know, congratulations to you on the already success of your campaign, because you are a voice of the people. And so I just want to say that we're going to continue to do what we can to bring attention and awareness and support your campaign. As you know, over the last 2 years of doing the Golden Road TV show, and committing my efforts to the Sacramento River watershed, which is all the way from Mount Shasta to Sacramento and out to Davis, all the way up to Lake Tahoe, that this region, in collaboration with Sacramento County and the capital, which makes a lot of decisions for California, a lot of people are very optimistic about the positive changes that we can make. And it's really not about Democrat versus Republican versus Independent versus Green Party. This is about people's platform and the changes that we need to make to really fulfill our destiny as a country, as people, and the quality of life, and fulfilling the promise that America was founded on.
Exactly. Really, we're being divided. The people are being divided. And I think, just as you're saying, these things wash away those party lines. These areas apply to all of us. All of us want to have clean air. All of us want to have clean water. All of us want to have healthy food. Not want, we need. These are the very things that we need. And so a lot of the differences, you know, that we have per party line, those wedges are being driven by the establishment to keep us focused on those areas where we may have differences, but we have to work towards putting those aside. I can tell you that my platform has been so controversial because I've been speaking the truth, that the registrar in Sacramento County illegally kept me off the ballot. And so through election code violations, with the help of the Sacramento County Superior Court judges, kept my name off the ballot. So that's okay like that, actually. Just, no, when you do that, you're actually shutting it off.
It gave you choice of storage.
Yeah, I just say ignore on that. Just,
I'll give you this one.
oh, okay.
You'll
All
have
right,
it
all right.
today.
Still going. Sorry.
It's still going.
All right, so, and so what people are going to have to do is they're going to have to write my name in. And so you've got choices in District 6, and there's going to be a place that says write in, and you just fill out the oval, and you remember to do this. It's going to be backwards over there, but write in Austin Bennett. And you don't even actually have to spell it correctly. Get as close as you can, but I had 10 variations that I was able to use. And Mike, I want to add to that sort of on a different area also. But you know what I recognize that even in our court systems, the judicial side of things, the corruption is extraordinarily egregious, and I witnessed that. And the judges who I faced as I was trying to get a writ of mandate, get the registrar ordered to put my name back on the ballot because my name was illegally being kept off the ballot. And what I discovered is that the judges I was facing were appointed by the governors. And think about that. We have governors appointing judges, you know, on the bench. So the judicial side of things should be completely separate from any powers that the governor has or any influence that the governor has. Otherwise, there's a conflict of interest. The only interest, that the judicial system should be looking out for is the interest of the people. We, the people, this government belongs to the people, and we're protected by the Constitution, and we're protected by the Republic. And one of the other introductions, the things that I became aware of, was the corruption that's going on in family court, which is extraordinarily egregious. And family court, the court system, the judges in the court are basically, they're taking advantage of spouses, partners, whatever the situation is, and exploiting their financial situation for gain. And if you ever have the opportunity to watch, and I highly recommend it. Now, I have not experienced the divorce court or family court system, but I've interviewed enough people to know that we've got a massive problem there, an egregious situation where judges and lawyers are not behaving in a way in the interest of jurisprudence. And so there's a documentary called Divorce Court, C-O-R-P. I highly recommend people to watch that. Divorce Court is an eye-opener. And so that's one of the things that I want to do there also, is lead a task force. And I have my eye on a couple people who would be excellent to lead that task force, but to audit the family court system, which is absolutely, as I said, separating families, taking advantage. And you know how this works, Mike? I have to share with you. What they do is they find out, you know, what's in the portfolio, what the husband, wife, believe it or not, what the husband has and what the wife has, and they drive that wedge in between them. And by the time it's said and done, their assets have been depleted, and they're fighting and more angry. And so the corruption is egregious even in that system. And so we have corruption everywhere. And that's not an inflammatory statement to say that we need to fix things, but there are good people, there are good citizens who are willing to stand. We just need honest and true representatives who will be a voice for the people, and the people, as I said, need to stand behind. We need to reach that critical mass where all of us, as you said, Green Party, Democrats, Republicans, Independent, no matter what, Libertarian, that we're coming together hand in hand as we the people to take back this state and make this state a beautiful state again, a golden state. California is a beautiful state, and it has been being run in the ground. And I really truly mean this when I say that if we specifically hired representatives to destroy this state, they wouldn't have done anything differently, because where the state has gone, our representatives have absolutely abused their offices against the will of the people.
And I know that you said these are not inflammatory remarks. I think that they are inflammatory only for those who have cognitive dissonance, because people will only see what they want to see, and whatever they hold as truth, if anything other is said than that truth, then it becomes inflammatory and challenging. But I think now is the time to challenge people's understanding of these different topics that we're talking about today, and it's time for real change. And when you speak about the corruption of the system, again, I thank you for that, because even recently they did an investigative report, and they found all of the offshore bank accounts of all these world governments and world leaders who had been basically stacking away hundreds of millions of dollars in offshore accounts, and basically how the politicians were robbing the people. And it's also a testimony of how does Vladimir Putin become one of the wealthiest people in the world, because he has his hand in every cookie jar. I think, and again, I don't want to politicize this video too much, but I think we can currently see what's coming out right now, even with the current administration, with major payoffs and major intervention in different types of mergers with AT&T and various businesses. It's not politics for profit. Politics is supposed to represent the people. And again, I just acknowledge you for really helping to be the voice of all those people who don't have the education, the resources, the tenacity, and the compassion to do what you're doing.
You know, one of the first things that they do, just if in the process that I learned, is very early on I got a call from someone telling me that they really liked me, and they told me they were from the same party. And for me, it's not a party thing. Okay, we have to run on a party. And maybe some of the things that align more for me, I went with that party. But this person told me they wanted to. They said, we need to get $10 million into your campaign fund, and then invited me to spend time on their yacht, which I didn't do. But the point I'm making is the very first part of everything is they try to see if you can be bought. That's the very first step. And then when they realize that you can't be bought or you won't be bought, and then that's when the intimidation starts to come, or controlled opposition comes in, and they try to discredit you. They try to change the narrative. One of the things they've tried to portray me as, I want to share this with you, as being a pharma puppet, that I work for pharma, you know, and it's stunning to me, some of the things that they will come up with. But even more stunning is some of the things that people will still believe, and you know, you refer to cognitive dissonance. But anything that I have said, and this is why I tell people that you know that I'm being forthright with you, because the things that I'm bringing out into the light are detrimental to my health, and so I am being a voice for the people. The things that I'm targeting are the things that I believe that people, that I'm certain, I know that people need to be aware about. You know, people, look, we have problems with taxes. I mean, I have a degree in finance, bachelor's of science in finance, and you know, 3 professional financial designations and securities licenses, and I haven't focused on the area of finances because that is secondary right now to our health. I mean, is this state going broke? Is money being squandered? Absolutely, we're going to address it, because that's absolutely happening. And really trying to figure out where all the money's going, that is going to be a challenge in itself. But my focus has not even been so much in the area of my expertise, but it's been more so in the area that people need to know about, and that's the idea that there's been mass poisoning going on. And anything that I have spoken about, when I speak about the vaccines, and I speak about the fluoride in our water, and I speak about the chemtrails, the aerosol spraying, and Monsanto, the genetically modified organisms which are detrimental to our health, the science proves it. So there's nothing that I have said, if someone wants to consider it inflammatory, what I'm saying is that there's no way you could have done your due diligence, because when you do your due diligence, your eyes will open. And I like to believe that that's the type of man I am, that when someone provides evidence for me, and I've shared that before, like when someone comes and says, hey, research 9/11, you know, we know it's being conveyed. I'm not going to go down this path, but whatever's being conveyed in the news, I recommend you research 9/11. And And so I do my due diligence, and that's where I base my conclusion, based on science, based on truth. And that's what I ask the people to do, because if, and I know what I'm saying is true, but if you're not certain about it, or you don't want to believe me and you haven't done your due diligence, it's in your interest, because what I speak about is in humanity's interest.
So you're not a cultivator of fake news or politicized propaganda.
If I was, I'd still be in the news industry because I loved it.
Right.
You know?
And it's interesting because they recently found out that there's a news agency whose name escapes me at the moment, but that has bought a couple hundred news stations, and they basically print up one script that's used for all the reporters in all the towns and counties and states throughout the country who are all reading the same piece of propaganda to paint the picture and to basically brainwash people, and that this is the actual truth.
Yeah.
So I really appreciate that you are a supporter of personal investigative journalism and exploration of truth. And in this day of the internet, people can get online and, like I said, do the due diligence and find out what actually is happening.
Right. It's through the live, the live feed, Associated Press, and you get your script. And that's what reporters do. They get their script. Some of the stories, the stories we write. I was writing my stories, but you can get your story just by getting it from the Associated Press. And often there's pressure to use certain stories, which really is creating the narrative. Because right now, the media has been used as a tool, and believe it or not, by this government. And then the government is being controlled by special interests. And so the idea to run for office, for anyone who wants to be a voice for the people, you have to recognize that you're laying your life down for the people. When you choose to speak the truth, your life and situation does come under threat. But I feel that we are in a time of great crisis, and I would rather lay my life down and lose my life doing what is in the best interest of this state, of the people, and our children's future, because otherwise there's not going to be a tomorrow for any of us. It is that bad, and if anyone does their due diligence, they'll recognize that what I have just said is absolutely true.
Well, if we look all the way through history, at artists, at political people like Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, who have experienced some of the same opposition. If we look at people who were working in the arts and music, like the John Lennons, the Bob Marleys, who all had very mysterious paths. And also, even if we look in the holistic health industry, of those people who have actually come up with the root cure and some of the causes of why cancer is so prolific, and they're mysteriously having their houses broken into, being found dead, having different things. And not only that, but on top of the holistic health industry, going all the way back to Nikola Tesla, all the people who are working on the innovations of free energy, and basically are doing technologies that could put the monopolization of the power grid out of business and actually give power back to the people.
Right.
And we can see small remnants of these technologies, like they've allowed solar to, right now I've heard that actually Nevada, California is about to reach the 50% solar generation point for the state. But a lot of these technologies have been suppressed, like using electromagnetism to create energy. So again, for some people who don't want to do due diligence and see the truth, these can be extremely inflammatory remarks, especially coming for someone from running for a political office. But again, I'm here with fascination and full support, because you are talking about these issues that people don't want to talk about, and people are trying to run a popularity contest more than a political campaign based on truth and the welfare of their constituency and the health of people.
Right. Well, as I said, when I brought up the idea of chemtrails to a senator, and he said, "Well, what are those?" And he said, "I don't know what they are, so they're not important. Think about that." And that's a representative. And I spoke to someone who's running for governor and a top contender, and I brought up that, and he said, "Well, I've heard of them, and can anything be?" So I'm speaking as I would speak as a member of we the people. I want representatives to represent me. I want representatives to represent the truth. And the priority goes, as I said, I'm a broken record here, but our health. We must protect our health. And because if we allow ourselves to be sickened by a deliberate, constructed effort by this establishment, by special interests, then we're never going to be able to make the changes that we need to in the future. Today, now is the time that we have to address it, and that's, if I can put this plug in, that's why I'm asking the people to share my name, to spread my name through social media, to write in Austin Bennett, and use this plug here, write in Austin Bennett and fill out and blacken the oval, because right now the other representatives who are running against Richard Pan, they cannot contend with him, and they will not be the voice that we need in this government. Right now we have this senator who I'm running against. Now he is the one who authored SB 277, which makes it mandatory for children to be vaccinated in order to have a public and private education. And the Constitution of this state, the California Constitution, it provides that. That's a right that belongs to every child, that is going to school to get a public or a private education without being forced. That's an unconstitutional law, SB 277, which was written by Richard Pan. And now he also introduced 2 bills. And believe it, I want to share this with you, Mike, but there's 2 bills, and one came under SB 18, and then another one came under a Senate resolution. And I want you to hear this because both of them are the Children's Bill of Rights. And so why would there be 2 bills? Think about that. Why would there be 2 bills that are basically identical? And here's the thing that I noticed, that as SB 18 is going through, the only thing that SB 18 does, when you talk about the Children's Bill of Rights, what it does is it gives this state control over our children. Our children already have a Bill of Rights, and that's under the Constitution. They're already protected. There's no reason to add anything in, but it is a ruse by the state of California to gain control over our children so that they can come into our homes as an act for the Child's Bill of Rights, and to decide that if a parent is not vaccinating, that they're not looking out into the interests of their children, and then they get CPS involved. And so SB 18, I saw something where the people believed that it's dead. But what people weren't aware of is through the resolution that has much less oversight, the exact same bill is dormant right now. It's under the radar screen, so people aren't aware of it. So the point is write one, and people think that it's dead, but there's another one that's going through the resolution process, which, as I said, requires much less oversight, and it's a situation that has been used against the people to be able to get laws passed under our noses. And also, Richard Pan has introduced a new bill, and I don't know if you're probably familiar with this one, and I don't remember the numbers to it, but this new bill requires that anything that we share on social media has to go through the government's fact checker. And if the government fact checker does not align with what we're talking about, say for example, we're talking about genetically modified seeds not being healthy, if the fact checker that belongs to the government, that's of the government, says that is not so, we will be breaking the law by sharing it. What this is an infringement against our First Amendment. And what is happening right now is this government is coming against our First Amendment. There was another bill that was working through, as many of you know, and this was the one so that the fire marshals would visit homeschoolers. That violated the Fourth Amendment, the 13th Amendment, and the 14th Amendment. And then we have laws that are being pushed now that violate the Second Amendment. And the thing that people must recognize, that if we lose the Constitution, if our amendments are violated, if our republic is destroyed, then everything that has made this country wonderful will be gone, because we are moving towards a police state, and that is the truth. And the sooner that people recognize and that we can reach that critical mass, the more effective that we're going to be as a people, because we'll start working together. And again, that would be like even supporting representatives who speak the truth. We can't allow the media to set the narrative for us. We've got to look for ourselves and not yield, as Mike was saying, not yield to cognitive dissonance, where a lot of our beliefs are even self-contradictory, but that we do our due diligence. It's our responsibility to do our due diligence as citizens. Otherwise, our ignorance is going to kill us.
So I know we could talk for a lot longer, but I think, can we give people information of how they can find out more about your campaign, your work, your platform, and if they'd like to contact you or maybe host an event where you could come and speak? How could they do that?
Yeah, you can reach me on my website. You can go to my website at bennettforsenate.org, and that's BENNETT 4 Senate.org, or bennettforcalifornia.com, and my email is austin@bennettforsenate.org. And if you have an event where you want me to come and speak, I would be happy to. And everything that I'm doing, I see myself, because that's what I am, a public servant, and I'm here to serve the interest of the people. And that has been my commitment when I decided to run 2 years ago. And I have my children's future in mind. I have other people's children's future in mind. And that's my commitment, that I will be a voice for the people. I will not yield, and I will not be intimidated by the government or by representatives there. And I don't fall into that category where I want to be in the in group. And I think that people recognize that I would rather speak the truth, even if I was 1 out of 10 people who was speaking the truth and everyone believed that I was not speaking the truth, than being a person who conforms at the cost and of the interest of the people.
And it's really fantastic because, of course, on the grassroots level, more and more people are waking up and dealing with these topics, coming up with solutions and answers. But I kind of see you that you're really kind of the political canary in the coal mine. You're really the harbinger who's there starting to make the changes. And in some ways, not to compare politically, but there have been people in the past who have run political campaigns who have really tried to be the voice of the people. So again, thank you so much. So much time and energy and commitment goes into what you're doing. So I really thank you for that service. And is there any just closing words you'd like to share with people before we finish?
Could if you would, Mike, would you give your full name and title? And I want my friends to know that trusting that Mike will do this, that I will be interviewing Mike. I want you guys to meet Mike. He's an amazing man, and I'm privileged to be here. And thank you for having me. But would you just give a...
Yeah, my name is Michael DiMartino, and you can find me on LinkedIn. But I've been a producer for over 35 years, and over the last 8 years, after working at the University of California and the University of Massachusetts, and doing a lot of events, I have really focused my attention on doing more investigative journalism to bring out a lot of what you've been talking about this afternoon, to help educate and empower people with the information and the truth so that we can make the changes. Because I also have children. One of them is a physician's assistant and actually works in Brooklyn in the emergency ward. And my other daughter works in communications, but I'm also concerned for their health and their safety and for the health of the world, because it's very typical. We say, God bless America, and I'm definitely what I would consider a true American, a true patriot, but I also like to say God bless the world, because the time of the division of people based on race or color or religious beliefs or culturalization or age or gender is really falling away. So I'm actually a 3-year seminarian as an interfaith minister, but I'm just very committed to education and media and trying to help inspire and educate people. Again, continued support and appreciation, and again, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Be sure to check out our weekly 2-hour TV show, Golden Road. It's a show dedicated to arts, culture, community building, economic development, health, the environment, peace and justice, and science and tech. And also, over the last 2 years, we've covered over 300 individuals and organizations and businesses throughout the Sacramento River watershed. And we just launched the Source Directory,
which is a listing of these people, and it's highly vetted, so you can find people who are actually doing good in the community, and you can find information at www.thesourcedirectory.org.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it.
Follow the golden road, follow the golden road, follow, 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 follow the golden road. We're off to see the Golden Road TV show. You'll find it is a whiz of a show, if ever a show there was. It's arts and culture and history, environment, health, technology, and peace and justice, science, just because of the meaningful things it does. We're off to see the Golden Road TV show.